Hey guys, what is up? AwesomeTheSauce here. Hope you guys are having a great day and welcome to a very exciting video. Today, we saw multiple updates come out for PvP. There was a gigantic hotfix. There's all kinds of things to cover. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Now today, I'm actually going to upload two videos. One video is just going to be on the top 3 changes right now that you can see. Well, like right now what you can see in front of you, what made it into the game. The other video will be a full overview of the dev diary that dropped today. A lot of the information that I am getting from this is from the dev diary, but it's also about what we can expect in the future. There's a lot to talk about in that dev diary. But without further ado, let's get right into this video. If you log into Wizard101, what has changed with PvP? So this is a really big one. Now they have a new damage intersection. If you guys don't know how a damage intersection works, in the previous damage and resist nerf, I don't know if you can call it a nerf, rebalancing, whatever you really want to call it. Basically, excessively high resist and excessively high damage were basically reeled back a little bit. If you have very high resist or high damage, you can actually test this out. So for example, right, I have a ward pet with balance and fire ward. If I mouse over the fire, you will see that even though I have technically 78 resist, if you just count all the numbers that my stats give, it's only effectively 63%. So that means, right, let's say someone has literally no pierce whatsoever. If they hit into my 78 resist, it's actually 63 resist. It gets a little bit more complicated with pierce and everything, but the change today isn't actually with resist, it's with the damage. How it used to be, if you had 100 damage, that's when there used to be like some sort of deterioration that happened. So for example, right, my 115 death damage, you can tell right now that it's actually the full 115. Previously, it would not have been like that. So this cutoff is at 125 damage now, but even if you go above 125 damage, you will still have, like, you know, a decent bonus to it. So, like, for example, right, if I'm 11 damage over the intersection, I still get 8 of that 11, which means you could actually theoretically do a high damage build now. Now, here's the thing. In my opinion, the meta has been extremely slow. Hitting through shields is pretty much the only thing you can do against people who shield spam. And with the way they made damage so low, I genuinely feel like this is a good change. And as it might be deceptive because I feel like, you know, it looks like, oh, it's only like 10%, 20% extra maximum. Maybe if you completely change your stats up, it's a little bit extra. But really what this does at this cutoff, in my opinion, it actually makes schools act different. You won't see an ice get to 125 damage. So finally, them having lower damage actually means something. They put the damage cutoff at 100. And every school can reach 100 pretty naturally, so it kind of didn't make sense. Now, if you're a fire with, you know, 135 damage versus a balance with 135 damage, your stats are obviously going to be different because you have to sacrifice more stats as a balance to get to that level. So what I think we'll start seeing is some sort of school identity will actually come up a little bit just off of this alone. Now, how will this affect pacing? I'm gonna be honest, I genuinely think that one-shot strategies are going to be just as useful as they were before, but strategies that don't involve one-shots are going to be a little bit better because now you have a little bit more damage. So if you hit a lot more, maybe there will actually be a reason for you to have that damage in the first place. The main reason why I think this is actually a good change is because the way resist unfortunately works is that it has to involve damage and pierce, right? So even if you have very high resist, there's actually technically no real penalty for it because if someone has pierce, the pierce goes into the resist and then you have like that little stat deterioration. There was no such thing with damage. So I feel like now resist and damage are on a little bit of equal footing. Now the cutoff is a little bit in favor of damage, but if you have really high resist, you can still do well because you can counter pierce and damage at the same time with resist. The second really big change is that they've reduced the cast rates, or at least changed somewhat the cast rates of Balance Blade, Dragon Blade, D-Lance, and I assume other Maycasts. Brace and Fortify are on that list too, and basically what it is that they've tweaked how often it casts, but also they've fixed some glitches, and I honestly, this was a big one for me. This is one of the most problematic goddamn cards when it comes to Maycasts and Wiz, but this was causing a lot of issues in PvP. Basically, I think what was happening either it was the pierced blade that you get every time you do something in Shrike, or it was the backlash or something about that part itself that kept double triggering Maycasts. So people with double blade pets could literally do nothing in Shrike. They could literally just hit, like, they could want it in Shrike, and then they could get 2 free blades because of 1, just the want it, and then 2, because of whatever extra thing on Shrike was triggering a second Maycast. So what you were seeing is people in Shrike getting insane Maycasts, and Brace was not, Brace was also a part of that. You could literally Shrike, and that could trigger a Brace, that could trigger an Infal. There were all kinds of really, really wacky things with Shrike, and according to the dev diary, they've tweaked that at least somewhat. I'm sure there are going to be more Maycasts that they are going to look at, because I'll be honest, I feel like whenever one Maycast leaves, another one will come, and this is a very frustrating part of PvPing at the moment. I think a lot of people, including me, I'm not going to be like, oh, I was above all of this. I genuinely thought that the meta that preceded this whole thing, where literally the Maycast that everyone used was Virulence or, whatever your equivalent, damage aura is, I thought as long as they reduce the cast rate on this, PvP would be balanced. But instead, people found other ways, including D-Lance, Dragonblade, Balance Blade, and now we have a meta where basically instead of Virulence, you just get a blade that you can use whenever. So I hope that with the reduction of cast rate on D-Lance especially, but also Balance Blade and Dragonblade, maybe we'll see something of a difference. Maybe we'll actually see Maycasts not completely winning games. And the very details of this are very promising, in my opinion. One big detail is that a lot of Maycasts are only going to trigger if you do something on your opponent. And basically, there's a big thing, and I will go over this in another video in length, but basically there's active Maycasts and reactive Maycasts. So blades, I assume, would only work when you actually do something on your opponent, like hit. So instead of bubbling or blading or shriking or shielding or bracing, and then you get a blade for free and literally you have no punishment for doing anything defensive, now that won't happen. So I assume that especially in a turn-based format, that's a big deal. That way, like if you're in the middle of a bubble war and you have more bubbles to cast, you're not going to get punished because someone gets a D-Lance. I cannot overstate how stupid a concept it is for you to shield and then you get a D-Lance. It doesn't make any sense. You're doing something defensive. Why is it that off of complete chance, you're ready to do something offensive the next turn? It doesn't add up. So hopefully this philosophy will make Maycasts in general in the future, the ones that they make that are new, the ones that are, being abused now, hopefully all of those are on some sort of footing that's not frustrating, annoying, and game-breaking. Now, the last thing that I'm going to cover in this video I'm very excited about is the fact that temporarily anyways, PvP is now free to play for if you're level 20 or above. I think this is crazy because this is like, I'm gonna be honest, it's something that I've wanted in the game for literally years. I genuinely think this can only do good for the game, and if you look at the queue, it's not like I'm making this up. There are 11 people waiting in queue, and if you click on the watch, there are 25 matches right now, and this isn't even prime time. The other change that's very notable that they made to matchmaking is now all these queue times that have apparently, like affected PvP players, apparently they're fixed. So now there's a couple of things that are there. One, you won't be in like a ghost queue, which I've encountered a lot, where you're literally not able to get a match for 30 damn minutes. Again, we will experience this on stream tonight, so make sure you tune in, but I assume that's not a thing anymore. But more importantly, now you can actually get a rank opt-in. So that means that if you're low rank and you're going against someone high rank, but you're at the same level, you get an opt-in, and I think that's really important. At level 140, I think a lot of people, sometimes they would rather just get a match than wait for something that's quote-unquote fair. I'm sure that the perfect fix is not putting a bunch of warlords going against privates. I get that. I don't think that that's a solution either. But I think until they institute an elo system, this is the best way to do it. Have them opt in. I think an elo system would fix things. That way, if a warlord does win against a private, they don't get as much rank. And if the private wins against a warlord, they lose a lot more. If you can change the stakes a little bit to the point where it's not completely abusive how you can farm the queue of low rank players, I think that's a much better solution. At least now there's people in queue because they're not waiting forever. And by the way, right now they're actually like, there are level 60s that are fighting. They're privates and stuff, but they're fighting. There's level 100s fighting. They're like, this is clearly better. This is a much healthier queue than what we've seen in recent days. So all I'm hoping for is that these kind of changes bring people into PvP, especially the free to play thing. Guys, if you're a first time PvP player, I really hope you give it a shot. I genuinely think that the biggest barrier for anyone is money. And I think that this side activity has been unfairly treated for literally years. And as much as I would like to claim this as a victory for PvP, I really just hope it's not a temporary thing. I don't see why anybody would actually benefit from making PvP free temporary. I don't get it. I don't see a good argument for that. You're bringing more people into a very engaging side activity and removing a barrier of entry. And now, if a lot of people actually do end up trying it, you have a reason to prioritize it just as much as any other side event. Guys, there will be another video today on the full future changes. So these are just a few big changes that you'll see today. There are some changes that are upcoming that I really want to talk about, so I'll make another video on that. As always, drop a like if you enjoyed, leave us up if you're new. What do you guys think about the new damage stats? What do you guys think of the Maycasts? What do you guys think of free-to-play PvP? Let me know in the comments. Drop a like if you enjoyed, leave us up if you're new. As always, there's tons of links in the description, including my Twitch, my Twitter, my Discord, my Instagram, and of course my Patreon. And as always, if somebody hasn't told you you're awesome today, they doing something wrong. So stay awesome, and yeah.